Hello and welcome to the ICT Pulse podcast, the online platform where we discuss ICT issues from a Caribbean perspective. I'm Michelle Marius, your host and the editor and publisher of ICT Pulse. Welcome to our final community chat and our final podcast episode for 2023, in which we'll be doing a Caribbean tech health check and discussing Caribbean tech trends in the region. Joining me today are two individuals who are no strangers to the show and who have been keeping tabs on the tech happenings across the region. First, we have a longtime friend of the show, Yacine Khelladi, an economist, digital policies and ICT for the consultant who is based in the Dominican Republic. Yacine is also the moderator of the Caribbean ICT stakeholders virtual community, CIVIC. And we also have Matthew Cowen, who is an IT specialist, researcher, and digital analyst specializing in ICT in the Caribbean region. He's also the founder of dgtlfutures, through which he wants to help small and medium-sized enterprises across the Caribbean develop and implement their digital transformation strategies. Yacine, Matthew, welcome back. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Michelle. Nice to be here as always. Always a pleasure.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All right, folks. So let's just jump right into what has been happening in the region for the past year. And I guess let's start with you, Yacine. What do you think has been big this year in tech in the Caribbean?
Okay, that's a tricky question. So first, okay. As you know, I'm not a pure tech person, although in February it will be 30 years working in ICT for development, let's say, or digital for development in the Caribbean region. In February, that will be my 30th anniversary. But I'm still very much wondering how tech is used to change realities. So social realities, economic realities, cultural realities, power dynamics, and that's really what matters to me. So I'm not a gadget oriented, or not even gadget, I mean technology oriented, let's say, person. So not much has happened. Maybe the big discussions, a lot of talk, a lot of wondering about AI and the new MLMs models and the ChatGPTs, and everybody wondering what is that going to happen, what is guy going to do, but just talk so far, as far as I see, and little impact so far, other than in the imagination of people. And I see that also things that were supposed to be big and happen and do a lot of have a lot of impact I don't see it, or maybe the fact that I don't see it means just that the region uses a bit, catch up a bit, not. But it's not really like there's no breakthrough, there is no big change, there is no something I can say, okay, wow, this happened, that's a big change. So blockchain, well, still there. Cryptos, okay, some banks have been advancing CBDC, okay. The open data, not much, a few portals, not many data, so on. ICT for agriculture, okay, a few startups, techs there, here. Fintech, okay, people instead of making a line in the bank, they do, but did it change the reality of people? Did it make the economy more competitive? Do we have less poor, or do we have more empowered people to struggle with the challenges we have in our societies in the region? I don't see much change. So I'm a little bit pessimistic here, in the sense that I don't see that this big breakthrough of technology changing the nature of things or the dynamics of development or social, etc., or not even helping us better our readiness for climate change, or for the big issues we have in some countries. It's migration, poverty, health, COVID. I don't see it. So maybe that's the big the big thing I see. It's not there. It's not happening. A lot of talk, but not a real change yet, that technology can say had an impact that make a change anywhere in the region, or a big change. And I said, maybe just the only change was we catch up a little bit. We are not the last in the class, but still, no, I don't see this structural change that I've been dreaming of and trying to support for the last 30 years. I don't know.
Absolutely. No, Yacine, I love your perspective because I think we can get so caught up in the activity, and what you're asking us to look at is the impact, right? Matthew, let me let you go, and then we can probably even have a little bit more of a conversation on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't disagree with anything that Yacine said. There's kind of incremental change. I'm a big fan of a quote by Ernest Hemingway when he was asked how he was made bankrupt, and he said, "Very slowly and then all at once." And I kind of always hope that incremental change is going to get to a tipping point where things are going to move into structural change. But I don't see it as yet, absolutely. So big things. I think one of the things that really, really stuck out this year on the operational side of things is cybersecurity, particularly some of the attacks that have happened around the Caribbean. And I think this has been a real wake-up call for a lot of organizations in the Caribbean, in the sense that they were often in a position of, I'm too small a fish to fry, or I'm far away, so I'm not really, a legitimate target. And that has really been turned on its head recently. And I think that that's been a big wake-up call, and we've seen a number of attacks and incidents, and we're continuing to see that. What we're not seeing is that kind of structural change in how we deal with that at the moment. Again, I agree with you, Yacine, a lot of talk, a lot of, put in place ideas and policies maybe, but does that lead to actual change? And it's a very difficult thing because, as you know, Michelle, you're quite aware, a small organization of 10, 15 people has to invest an enormous amount of money in cybersecurity in the same way that a larger organization has to invest. It's not because you're small or you're large that the security equipment and the skills you need are any different. They're just different in terms of scale rather than in terms of technology and competence. And so it is a difficult question, and I think there needs to be some serious discussion on that and how that can be dealt with. Other than that, I completely agree, Yacine. I think it's one always hopes that there's going to be some kind of Cambrian explosion of something, and to make it much more equitable. And we see, when you look at the statistics of digital divides, for example, that it's still there. It's going in the right direction, absolutely, but it's not. There's no major catch up yet, and that's something to hope for. And I do, although it's a pessimistic message that we're saying, I'm actually very positive in the sense of I know it is going in the right direction. I'd just like to see some acceleration on that.
Yeah, so I have two reactions to what Matthew just said. One, indeed, cybersecurity, and for me, the issue is that cybersecurity focus. I mean, it's necessary. Critical infrastructure, enterprises, government. All these attacks on businesses, and they get the data stolen. Here in the DR, we had the immigration database stolen, and they just decided not to pay, and they are rebuilding it, whatever, things like that. Okay, but what about the people? I mean, are we, and that's where I see a big gap now in the Caribbean, is the people that are everyday victims of phishing, of data theft, I don't see a massive capacity building for people to be aware how they can defend themselves, what are the threats, and how they can defend themselves. Even online gender violence, what they wrongly call the sextortions, or no, porn revenge. Sextortion is right. It's porn revenge that is a wrong term. I mean, okay, and all these things, phishing, banking. I mean, I receive every day 10 emails faking to be, the bank, the post office, the whatever, to get my. I know how to recognize. I've been here but I wonder how these millions of people who don't have this habit and just go there. Or the financial, or the crypto scams all over, investing here, investing that. The debt, I just read this morning, it was not in the Caribbean, but someone suicided in Chile after downloading a loan app, promising app, and getting threats, and their personal data stolen, and they just suicide. So this is probably happening every day, and we don't know much about it. I don't know what is the statistics in the Caribbean of that kind of cyber threats and And
So Yacine, there was an organization, there's an NGO called Get Safe Online that was doing a lot of work around the Caribbean, doing just that, doing the capacity building at the individual person's level. And unfortunately, I think their funding ran out. And that's really the crux of the matter, isn't it? You know, if there isn't the funding, then the work can't be done, because this kind of work takes a long time. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of people, and people can't work for nothing for obvious reasons.
And maybe what we have to do is have it like you teach people. I mean, children teach how to cross the road. They have to teach how to recognize a fake phishing email. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've discussed this before. I think, Michelle, where we talked about the cybersecurity and these kinds of things really need to be part of the school curriculum, and moving away from can you write a cursive very neatly, or can you defend yourself against cybersecurity attacks? What's more important and relevant today?
Yeah. And I think also, just piggybacking on all of this, because here it is that in terms of policy, and I think this is ultimately what one of the areas or challenges that we have, is that when we don't really have cybersecurity policies as countries. We have cybercrime policies and frameworks whereby, if you steal someone's computer, intercept a message, or various sorts of criminal what have been defined as criminal activities and offenses, that is what we go after. Granted that with so many of the incidents that are happening, you don't know who and where to point to as to who the perpetrators are, but we don't have any sort of policies as it relates to cybersecurity. Many countries, if they have certs, it tend to be government focused. If you have an incident, you cannot report it. What are the policies as it relates to awareness and capacity building within across our societies? These are the things that I think we need, and probably as I think we're talking about impact, and here it is that you see that there have been a lot of incidents, but nothing has changed, and neither have we begun to address those sorts of deficiencies in our countries.
So one of the issues about that is actually how the laws are actually structured. And I'm not saying there's anything particularly wrong in it. It's just that it does have an incident in how you can understand them. So, for example, when you're talking about cybersecurity, you're invoking e-commerce laws, your customer protection laws, consumer protection laws. You're having electronic transaction laws, telecommunications laws. And so here is a minimum of 4 laws that are being used to fight against an incident which is involved an individual, and how does that individual understand under what law and what legislation that falls, and who obviously to go to in terms of redress. And that's part of the difficulty, and it's not much different elsewhere. I mean, let's be fair, in France and in Europe it's similar as well. So some kind of overriding policy, or at least direction that simplifies for the everyday user, including small businesses, because the small businesses require that for obvious reasons, is probably one of the things that could be thought about in the future.
Yeah, and I would add to that laws, the set of laws you said, data protection, privacy protection, that areas, and that relates to another area, and it's all about government data and big businesses data and individual protection of their private lives and their private data, and people being aware of what is their data, what they can do, what someone else can do with their data, all related to data. And then comes all the discussion about the digital IDs, which have been a bit also, like 2 years ago, we expected to see a lot of digital IDs being set all around very quickly, and become a game changer in the e-government applications, with cross, and then suddenly I don't see. It's coming in Jamaica. It was the needs, and it comes and back and forth, and maybe it's moving ahead. But again, I see here the complexity of the issues is not. Maybe it's more complex than what we thought because of the implications in so many different areas, and how this is so transversal to so many things that you need to change at the same time to get something useful or benefit that has any positive impact. And you mentioned in your first intervention the economic. I mean, I was thinking, this empowerment of people, businesses, like if we look from the economic impact, right? So how are we just becoming? I have always this here in the DR. We have a large migrant Haitian migrant sugar cane cutters that came, that were never legal, that are underpaid, that are poorly, let's say, treated in poor conditions, etc. So are we just going to replace that with computers and have a big workforce of low digitally skilled but still digital workforce that will do maybe now train AI systems with the repetitive entries and things that are of low added value, let's say, and we are building again the same plantation economies in the digital world. So we'll have digital plantation, digital maquilas, digital free zone streets, whatever you want to call it. And we won't be changing our social economic reality and our place in the global, trade and we would just be replacing, cutlass with the computer. Okay, but is it making us different societies? Is it making the people, in a better social and health and education? And no, so or maybe no, or what do we need to do? And I don't see this conversation happening. I just see, or I don't see it that much. And again, that reinforces my idea that the issue is not tech, is about what is our development model and how tech can support it. And when we are in this tech sphere, we just, about, okay, database, tech this, blockchain that. But then, okay, how does it really change our social and economic realities? And for me, that's the key. I would love to see the region have that more integrated conversation, let's say, and not a tech conversation here, a climate conversation here, and a development, social, whatever conversation there. And for that, we need, and again, we come to the same, maybe last year, civil society and non-tech communities are not empowered to be part of this conversation enough for me. They should be, we should talk with people working in health, in education, more and more and more with the tech people. So we have this serious conversation, let's say, about how this is going to change this, and not just the tech here, the education there, and the climate here, the migration there. And there is a little bit like silos conversation about the development in the region.
Absolutely. I mean, Yacine, because you really touched on something that I have noticed myself, and to the extent that I can, that I advocate for, which is having a vision. Because I think there are two things. You have a vision, and maybe when we talk about vision in tech, it's tech, and it's focusing on different aspects of technology. So whether or not supposedly you upgrade your equipment and have new software and you optimize your processes, which is all well and good. But unless or until you can sort of synthesize it with the lives and happenings of people and of the industries and sectors within your society, which are going to be ultimately underpinned by tech, but if somehow whatever you're layering on top of that is not in and of itself transformative, then you are going to just, I mean, yes, you might have like fancy wheels on a car, but the car is not going to go much faster than whatever you had before. So, I think it's really something that we really need to look at. I'm interested to see Trinidad and Tobago currently is revising its national ICT plan. It is probably going to be ready sometime next year. And they have been consistent in trying to have their vision for their country evolve. So I'm interested to just see what that might look like, and whether or not, to the extent to which it will address what we see. But at the same time, you recognize, though, that a lot of countries in the region either don't have national development plans, period, or whatever they have is so dated that it really may not align with where we're going as societies today. So it really is something that I really feel very passionately about, and I hope that people will be able to have these conversations, and let us start having these conversations, because we almost do seem as if we're not moving anywhere very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that going back to what Yacine was saying, I think the dream had been digital transformation for good. The risk is digital colonialism. And I think that's, an area that I've been looking at quite a lot recently. I know we've been talking about it a lot over the last few months as well. Getting back to the ideas of national policies or national plans, the difficulty in those is that you need to start somewhere, and then you need to have a process in place to have iterative updates to that. And I think that there's often in IT, there's a big thing that happens often in IT, and that is that you do the investment, the initial investment, and then you tend to forget about the operation and what's required to keep it up to date, what's required to keep it running, what's required to keep it, secure on a daily basis. And so often there is a big investment cycle, nothing, and then another big investment cycle. And I think some of the policies are written in that kind of structure as well, where there's some time and investment to do the policy, and then, okay, it's great, we'll put it on the shelf, that's perfect, and then we'll look at it in 5 years' time. Problem is that we're in an industry which is changing so rapidly. More than 13 months ago, literally 13 months ago, an LLM was something that was a fantasy that nobody had even understood was possible. Not even the AI scientists themselves believed that was existing. Then a month later, ChatGPT hit the scene, and it changed absolutely everything in terms of what people thought that they could do with these devices, with computers and with access to the internet. And that's an interesting aspect that shows that how technology moves so fast that sometimes the policies need to be much more open to iterative modification on a regular basis, rather than just simply, okay, let's do a plan, put it on the shelf, and then come back to it in a few years' time.
Yeah. But let me just say then, but Yacine, though, do you find that as Matthew is saying, all right, we create this fancy plan, but then actually implementation of the plan tends to be a function of funding and the extent to which countries then are able to secure. Oftentimes it will be some sort of donor funding, and the challenges around those things, the constraints that often are attached to some of these initiatives, and the things that you might want to do as a country versus what you will get funding for. So, it really is, unfortunately for us, maybe a little bit of a catch-22, but maybe also we need to figure out how we might be able to do more with what we have, as opposed to every minute looking for funding to help us to drive massive initiatives that oftentimes don't give us the results that we anticipated.
Okay, so for that question, it's a complex one, because what is that we want to do and how we're going to fund it, and do we have to rely on external funding, or that's for national policies implementation, obviously we're talking about. So or is it something that we should have in our budget because we feel it's as important as maintaining the roads or paying the police or having the hospital running? So that's a matter of vision and how much you embed this digital transformation into your national development plans or not. Because then it's a matter, you can have technical assistance to, or to have best practices or this or that. But at the end of the day, if you're going to change your education, it's a national education budget. It's not something from a donor. A donor can help you, design a new curriculum maybe, but you still have to transform all your teachers and your teaching curriculum and all these things. And that's part of what you have to do for any other area. So that's one. But I wanted to touch on something I just thought, because you were saying, well, what is the year, what you see, what you don't. So take for example 5G. How much we heard 2 years ago, 5G is here, 5G coming, 5G this, 5G that, wonderful 5G. And what happened with 5G? There are some 5G networks. Where is this famous use case that is going to change? So who drove that discussion? Is it the industry? Is it the vendors? Is it the equipment vendors? Is it this? And then there is this huge divergence between the 5G model of the Europe and then the US that doesn't want the Chinese to be there, the Chinese that are pushing here. And so a lot of things that are happening, and we're like this, okay, data next 5G is magic. And then I don't see the use case that is the killer application that really transforms anything. I just see it's another upgrade and we have to pay for it. And the user is going to pay as always for it. and the vendors are happy to sell their things. And where is the change? Where is this? And then there is a model. Oh, 5G is going to be used for surveillance if you buy Chinese, but then we have a human rights approach to 5G. But I don't see how this conversation. I mean, it's like the region gets all these messages and things. But did we choose why we want 5G? Do we want 5G just to enable, new games or things, or we have a plan, for example, of transforming our tourism industry, and where 5G is gonna play a key role? And again, that's our thing to do. Are we going to do the same kind of tourism here, mass tourism, cheap tourism that is degrading the environment, that creates social problems, prostitution, move to poor workers who are living in shanty towns behind the resorts? Is that still what we want to do? Or we want to have another model of tourism, more sustainable, etc.? And then how 5G or blockchain or data or whatever is going to help me do that, and not the other way around. I'm not saying, oh, I have 5G for your hotels. Okay, but what I'm going to do, same kind of tourism? Is it cheap labor, prostitution behind it? And that's what I see here in mass tourism, right? So cheap tourism, destroying the environment, getting all the water, making the land more expensive for the locals, drying up the water underground. And what? Is that what I want 5G for? No, I want maybe another model. So again, it's putting the conversation heads up. So what is my development model, my tourism model, and then how 5G or blockchain or digital IDs or whatever you want can help me achieve that. And that's again, I'm sorry to insist so much on that, but for me, that's putting the horse up front and not the back.
Definitely. And I mean, even for that whole 5G conversation, it does seem to have even petered out a bit globally, because I think though countries are seeing, or telcos are seeing, that the massive investment that is required to successfully implement 5G, the returns on investment may not be as compelling as well, I don't know if initially there was any sort the business model worked, but it was the new shiny thing, and we were all supposedly excited to get the new shiny thing, not necessarily because we had any sort of cogent plan as to how we were going to leverage it to achieve certain things. So, a powerful and important observation, Yacine.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something on that, because I think that often we get hooked up on the technology, and I think Yacine is absolutely right. The technology, it's not a secondary consideration; it's more of a tool. How do we achieve what we want to do fundamentally? And I often use a simile of when I'm teaching certain bits and pieces, like the right tool for the right job. And you can have a Ferrari in Martinique or in Jamaica or in St. Lucia. You can have that Ferrari, but you're trying to drive on banana plantation roads with it. Is that the right tool for the job? No, it's not. It's a great tool, but it's not the right tool for the job. So,
yeah. Matthew, were there any sort of issues or any areas that surprised you that got more or less traction across the region?
Yeah, I mean, I've touched on cybersecurity, and obviously that's still a big thing, and it's going to be an ongoing thing. And we talked briefly about large language models like ChatGPT and so forth. I think that has been really impactful in terms of people understanding that they can do so many different things, but also it's been impactful in the sense of it's almost solidified for a lot of people their misunderstanding of what technology can bring and what technology is. And I'd like to see how that really does play out. And if we're going to avoid that situation of, oh yeah, AI is a great thing, we just have to do AI because there's AI, rather than the question of, I've got this particular problem, could AI be part of that solution? And I use the term part of that solution because I don't think it is the solution. And so it surprised me that people have really understood straight away that there is this tool, but it's also the real misunderstanding of what that tool is and what that tool can bring. And the vendors, the software developers and the vendors themselves are somewhat to blame in the sense that they're scrambling all to integrate AI into their tools. because it does provide certain functionalities that probably are a bit easier for them to implement using that technology. But really, what does that bring? Is that really useful in day to day? I looked at the Google. Did you see the Google video recently where they've released their new model? Last week they did a video. They did these examples of giving it a ball of yarn and a system providing some designs or ideas for using the ball of yarn to knit something, or to identify a drawing on a piece of paper, or inventing a game where you touch on a map or something like this. Well, number one, the video was let's say they had artistic license in terms of production of the video to be charitable. Okay. The second thing is that actually, when you look at those examples, they're all pretty useless. Actually, they're not really important things. They're not solving fundamental problems. They're not going into a business and saying, okay, I do this work, this is my process, how can I use AI to kind of to speed up that process or make that process more efficient, or even help me make more money that I can employ more people, or for me to be more compliant in terms of the laws, or for me to be more secure in terms of cybersecurity. And I think that's really the missing piece that I'm seeing at the moment. So yeah, that's kind of where I sit at the moment.
Matthew, I'm going to just throw another question to you, because I know that you are have been focusing, at least given a lot of attention to what's happening in fintech. Do you think, and Yacine had said that really, maybe you have a lot going on in fintech, but nothing transformative really. And I wondered whether or not, to some degree, could that be due to us seeing some of the upheavals that have been happening in recent months so, for example, with the arrest and trial of SBF, the situation with Binance. I don't know if there are any other things, any other activities or happenings, because it does seem as if, to some degree, that it seems as if fintech has almost cooled off. Things are happening, but the sort of excitement that perhaps we had seen in last year or the last 2 or 3 years has sort of chilled considerably.
So already I kind of separate fintech technology around financial industry and things like cryptocurrencies and speculative vehicles like traded on some of these systems like Binance. What I also see is that it's a very polarized world. There are those that are absolutely 100% convinced that this is the future, and those that are 100% convinced that this is not the future in terms of money. There doesn't seem to be much middle ground. What I do know is that the Caribbean obviously is in a particular situation where there's a high percentage of under and unbanked people, organizations which are smaller in size in terms of personnel, with restricted budgets and so on and so forth. And some of the tests of the central bank digital currencies, the CBDCs, have been world's firsts in the region. So the world's first economic union released Dcash, and we had the world's first in the sand dollar in the Bahamas. I know Jamaica is about to push it through. I can't remember if it's actually active at the moment or not. It is, yeah, that's right. I thought it was, but is that fundamentally changing the way people are using money? I don't think so at the moment, and there are a number of reasons for that. Obviously, trust is one big issue, and I think, as you touched on, the events that are going on, like what happened to FTX in the Bahamas, what happened, obviously, what's happening with Binance, and if you have a look around, follow some various blogs, you see that there are all of the promises around cryptocurrencies in terms of decentralization. You find that in reality they're not that decentralized, because there are generally one or two people that are much wealthier and holders of the sway or the political power. The ideas of it being anonymous, we've seen many incidences where the anonymity has actually been broken, and we can see that. Secure, we see that there have been many pulls and hacks and outright fraud and theft on that. So really the question is this a solution looking for a problem? Or is it, a tool that is, useful? Is it the right tool for the job? Is it the Ferrari going down the banana plantation roads, or is it the Land Rover going down the banana plantation roads? That's a very different question. I'm not sure where. I think we're more Ferrari than Land Rover at the moment.
Yacine, you want to chime in?
Yeah, not particularly. We already discussed this issue of crypto, blockchain, and so on. But then another thing that I was, you remember, I was working for a few years with the Alliance for Affordable Internet. We came up with this meaningful connectivity definition and policy, and we were successful in getting it to the global forum discussions. People meaningful. ITU had already some understanding of what meaningful. We worked with them. We definition and measuring what is meaningful connectivity. You remember the concept that people are either now is connected or not connected, and connected means they have used once the internet in the last 3 months. And then we came up with this is not enough, this is not good. We need to know how well they are connected. So we came up with this criteria: speed, the frequency of use, available unlimited data, device. Then people are well connected or poorly connected. So we have a new category like meaningfully connected. So we came up with, I mean, I'm not working anymore since last year, or a year and a half, with the Alliance, but the discourse was adopted, and I see every meeting now. At the last one, I was at the EU Digital Alliance conversation in Cartagena 2 weeks ago. So meaningful connectivity is there always now, and everybody. But I still don't see in the Caribbean the operationalization of adopting that concept, which means first, no, I need the data. I want to know how people are connected. Not just don't tell me that they have a phone and that's good. How much data they're using, how much frequency they're using, how much unlimited data. Do they own the devices? Is it the device to that quality? The speed they have to use, etc. So we are talking about connectivity, not yet about impact and use. But at least I need to know, and that I don't see the region yet moving towards analyzing that. So they have the discourse now. It's in the CTU, in the Caribbean Connect Forum, whatever, meaningful. But okay, measure what is happening. What is the situation in the region? I don't see it. And then what policies I'm developing to get people from poorly connected to well connected, because then I need specific policies. Some are related to infrastructure or cost of infrastructure sharing, spectrum, licensing. I have so many things I can do. The price of devices, the price of data, there are so many things we can do in terms of policy to try to get more people meaningfully connected. And I don't see yet, maybe it's on the cooking, I don't know, I'm not in every kitchen, but I don't see yet, the right set of policies saying, okay, this policy is specifically thought about. Now that we have 80% of the population that has a phone and more or less uses, we want to measure how well they are connected, if they are really meaningfully connected. And we have to set policies to have the specific groups that are poorly connected to get well connected. And that I don't see it. And I think that's one of the basic building blocks of digital transformation that we have to pay attention. So I hope that for 2024, policymakers and regulators and others in the region are going to say, oh, yes, we say we want meaningful connectivity. Now we're going to think about what do we need to do to get there. So I measure it and then have the right set of policies to lower the cost, to have more data, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the one conversation, I wanted to say that before I just remember, the one conversation that I see private sector pushing in the region is the fair share conversation. And the fair share conversation, of course. Should the OTTs pay for the infrastructure, basically? Should Facebook, Meta, Google, and others, and Amazon pay for the towers and the cables? and that conversation, I'm not sure that is the one that, okay, we can have it. It's not a problem, stakeholders or everybody. But I'm not sure if it's the priority or the right one now. And of course, they are pushing their interests, and it's normal. It's their interest as cost for corporation and businesses. No issues about it. That's their job. But I'm not sure that as a region, it is the center of what should be done. And I see that they're pushing because they have the PR capacity and the lobbying capacity. they're pushing for that. That's fair enough. But I'm not sure that's the right conversation for the region right now.
I definitely agree on that.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point. I wanted to say some of the learnings that are coming back in terms of the CBDCs in the Caribbean is based on the meaningful connectivity. When there isn't meaningful connectivity, there is low adoption. It's as simple as that. So you can have all the ideas and you can have a great tool, but if you can't get access to it from a fundamental level of connectivity, which is meaningful, then no, you can't do that. In terms of the fair share discussion, then yeah, absolutely. It's an opportunity for, and this comes back to some of the digital colonialism ideas that I've been researching and discussing recently. It's an opportunity for those organizations, the big organizations like Facebook, Amazon, and so on and so forth, to come into an area like the Caribbean, because it is so divided in terms of how it's structured and how it's set up, and that gives them the opportunity to make these discussions and play each island off each other, each country off each other, because there's no single force that can defend, or at least can impose their own ideals on that. And I think you're absolutely right. We're I think, can't remember the simile, but we're arranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It's probably not the right thing to do. At the moment, I think you're right. You need to be looking at some of the fundamental discussions first. But the problem is these are worldwide organizations, and they're going to push their agenda across the world. And it's as simple as that. And there's not really a lot you can do about it, apart from obviously defend based on your own, structure and laws.
But then you see, Matthew, I know, I definitely agree. But I also think, though, that because we often don't have a plan, you can easily get swayed, because what is the vision? What are you moving towards? And if certain other entities' agenda, does not align with yours, then you can for all intents and purposes disregard it and keep moving forward. But this whole issue, I think, about vision and what are our priorities, I think ultimately these are fundamental questions, and it's something that I think the region has not addressed probably since its own liberalization efforts. I think that with liberalization, you knew that you wanted, more competitive markets. Telecommunication was too expensive, and countries did what they had to do to remove monopolies, structures and frameworks that had existed, and to varying degrees fostering competition, etc. But I think from my observation, for the past 20 plus years, from a telecommunications perspective, we've just been sitting on our laurels and not necessarily, they're probably still patting ourselves on the back that we can afford the latest phones, the proliferation of smartphones and the development of the infrastructure. But to what end? And I think that is something that we really need to address. But just going back to the whole issue of the CBDC and meaningful connectivity, but something else, and again, I think it just sort of ties back. We're going around in circles to varying degrees, is just actually based on the podcast episode that was released this week, that the whole issue of ecosystems, because you have digital currency, but if you can't pay for services, if you can't, you're only transferring it between yourself and somebody else, and then they need to go and convert it into the local currency or something to be able to use it, then kind of what's the point? You might as well just work with, whatever might be the fiat currency and do your transactions there. So I think again, more holistic approaches and really trying to build the frameworks and not necessarily just focusing on just one little area and patting ourselves that we are able to launch a CBDC. Because if people can't use it, then what's the point?
Yeah, absolutely. These are step changes in a direction, and the ideas behind some of the CBDCs is, well, two things that really came out were quite interesting. Is that they were building a little bit more trust for people to do online transactions, whereas if you're in cash, then obviously you can't do online transactions. If you don't have a bank account, or at least you have access to a bank account which is limited in its capacity. So, for example, you have a particular savings accounts, for example, then you can't obviously do online transactions with savings accounts in the same way you can with like current accounts and credit cards that are attached to current accounts. Okay, so that was one of the other areas. But one thing that did come out is that, and this wasn't really one of the initial use cases, as far as I'm aware, or although it was discussed, I'm not sure it was a targeted use case, I would say, is it had actually been used quite substantially for remittance. So remittances from the diaspora that have gone onto these platforms like Dcash and used it to transfer money direct through, because obviously they found that the transaction fees were substantially lower than the transaction fees through things like Western Union and so on and so forth. And so it was interesting that it might not solve a fundamental problem locally, but it actually provided an avenue for development or at least ease of transaction and lowering costs in another avenue. And I think that was interesting as well. So I think sometimes these tools, we have an idea or have an ideal of it to be used like that, but in actual fact, often they can be used in a very different way, positively or negatively, by the way. But yeah, I think that was interesting as well.
Okay, so folks, let's probably start to wrap up and sort of talk about 2024. What would we hope to see, and probably what should be the priorities from our conversation? It does seem as if there are lots of issues. There seems to be an elephant that we need to eat, but I think the only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time, and hopefully to try and do it a bit strategically. So, Yacine, probably start us off and help us to what do you think we should really be focusing on in 2024?
We said it, and by the way, I don't eat elephants. I'm vegetarian, but I can drive the elephant out of the room by giving him some nice perspective on what's going on. I think, of course, what I say, for me, one of the building blocks is this meaningful connectivity again. So we are releasing the spectrum, the dividend spectrum, the 700, whatever, that for 5G, but is it really for connecting things, or we want to connect better people? So that kind of conversations, I think I would love to have more in the region. This integration of the different aspects, not have reflections also, because you said, okay, liberalization drove down the prices and everything, and monopolies, but do we have really what we need at this point, or maybe we need other strategies right now to finish the job, of connecting well everyone, and we see the limitations of liberalization and competition and etc. That obvious, no? Both in terms of wholesale and end user services. So that conversation still has to be there. Together with 5G, with spectrum use, with etc. I hope that we can move towards more a safer environment for people, because I think also people are stopped from doing interesting things or empowering themselves because of all the threats and everything. So having the cybersecurity conversation, of course, critical infrastructure, of course, resilience, of course, we are prone to nature, to whatever, cyclones and hurricanes and earthquakes and everything. But we need also to secure people's digital life and digital identity and digital personality. We need to get people more engaged in the conversation. I hope more people that are non-ICT, non-digital, non-tech get more and more looking into the implications of tech, of data, of AI, of fintech, of all these things, and start integrating it better and build this common vision on what we have to do. I don't know, maybe it's just big words I'm saying, and same as any politician would do, but that's what we have to do. We have to build that coherent articulation of a vision, strategies, plans, non-tech, non-ICT, with the ICT and the tech. I mean, that's the only way it can work. And as Caribbean, again, I mean, the how many years has been CSME and single space and all these things, and why does it move ahead sufficiently? It has nothing to do with tech or with ICTs. It's really regional governance, policy decision. We're stuck because the way the region is organized and behaves, and every island and every country, they don't want to give up any of their. Europe has been moving, bad or good, I don't know, but has been moving together because they gave up some of the national prerogatives for a regional one, right? That when you have a directive, everybody has to. Now there is the AI Act that just came out yesterday. Now they will all have to translate that international, and they will have to follow these things because they agreed on that. And that doesn't happen here. Here we agree, we do nice things. We say, we models, frameworks, laws, and so on. And then everybody goes their way and nothing much more. And we have nice CSMEs and single market and single economy and single digital space and whatever. But we still, the roaming may be the one victory or the one thing that has been, but I think companies would have done it in a certain, probably a bit later or something. But anyway, that for me, it's not enough. It's not something so substantial that changes the region. Let's say it's good, but we need much more than that. So that's what I hope to see, a region that changes, not only in the tech but for the tech overall.
Yes, Matthew, what say you?
Yeah, so Yacine, you stole my thunder. I was going to talk about single ICT space. I think it's an area that, we've got to stop talking and start doing. And single economy, and yes, I know that regional blocks that set up an economy and a legal framework like the EU are not perfect, and it wouldn't be perfect in terms of if it was implemented in the Caribbean. Of course it is, but what you do see is that there are so many advances that are brought out of that, pooling the strengths rather than fighting the divisions, and I think that that's a fundamental shift in belief that it can be done, but also real. We say volunteer in French, so it's the real will to do something, and I think that's lacking a little bit at the moment. And I think it's nice on paper, it's a nice idea, but there are a number of bitter pills to swallow, there are a number of hills to climb, there are a number of things. Do we really want to take it on board, or do we want to stay where we are, where it doesn't hurt too much? We're kind of used to how it hurts at the moment, and we're not prepared to take on a bit more hurt just to get over that hurdle. And I think that's a fundamental change that has to happen. We've talked all the way through this today, this episode, about policies like cybersecurity, and I do think that is possibly one area there might be some advances in 2024 where policies that are geared to protection from the very low level of society in terms of individuals all the way up through to government and large corporations. I think there is a step change, perhaps even a bigger change than that, in terms of mentality of what it really is. I've discussed on a number of areas where cybersecurity is now such a business that literally nobody is safe anymore. It's so easy, so quick, and so low cost to mount a cybersecurity attack anywhere these days. That it's I can't agree with you more, Yacine. It's absolutely right. We need to be doing the things and to take funding away from the projects that were already in place that do have on the ground work doing that is actually positive, and we can see the results, and there are positive results from that, and taking away funding from that I just think is inexcusable when we talk about things like cybersecurity. But obviously I can add in all sorts of other topics as well, but I wanted to stay on tech at the moment. So my big wishes are pretty much like Yacine. I'd like to see no longer incremental changes, but more not fundamental but step changes, but steps in terms of rather than walking up one step, let's try and walk up two steps and then see if we can kind of generalize that, and then let's try 3 steps in one go, rather than just doing little changes that's going to take hundreds of years to get anywhere. So that's really my thoughts for 2024. In terms of tech itself, there's just going to be more this is a year of AI again. We're just going to have AI all year round. Cybersecurity all year round. What I would like to see is where does that fundamentally change, and what solutions does that bring? Saying, well, what have we got, and what can we just shove AI into to make it sexy? So that's it pretty much for me.
Yeah. I think certainly 2024 AI will continue to do what it's doing, cybersecurity. But I think ultimately what we are hoping for is that there will be certain interventions that the countries themselves will make that will allow them to at least realize some meaningful change, and whether or not that it's one step at a time or multiple steps. But I think really ultimately it's about intention. There's a lot that happens in the tech space. There's a lot, tech continues to evolve. And so we can certainly bear witness to what is happening. But how are we then going to be proactive and intentional in not necessarily just allowing ourselves to be swept up in the hype and all of it, but in achieving certain things and hitting certain milestones which we believe are important. And that, I think, ultimately is what I myself as well am hoping for. And as tech is going to continue to evolve, but how are we going to ensure that we are evolving with intention and to achieve certain goals? Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. I guess happy holidays to you when it comes, and to our listeners as well. As I indicated at the start, this is basically our last episode for the year. So we'll see you back in 2024, January 2024. Thank you so much. Take care.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and happy holidays to everybody as well. Thank you.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the ICT Pulse podcast. You can find links to some of the things we talked about on our website, ict-pulse.com. The music is from the composition The Last Word, Oui Ma Chérie by Andy Norell. If you like this episode, please show your support by leaving us a 5-star review, as it will help others find the show. You can email us at info@ict-pulse.com or drop us a note on social media at ICT Pulse, either on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. We hope you'll join us again for our next episode. Take care.